Hello. We are live. Live. Back again after a week of things not really working out. We tried to do some innovation on the stream last week, doing a footage review through Teams, through the live stream. It didn't work, but that's okay. We're back with the usual programming. Welcome. Hey, Dom. It's good to see you guys. Did you sail this week? Dom saying no sailing, but some waves. Doing some surf sessions. Cool. Dom, how's your surfing level compare with your windsurfing level? Is there much crossover? Are you in a similar place with both? Hey, Tomas. I got in the water. There was a big storm in Northern Europe, and I got on the water Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Thursday was pretty crazy up in Handstham. I was on a 3.7, fully powered, overpowered. Hey, Carl, Richie, Axel, Max. Super powered, survival conditions. It actually got better in the evening. There was a period where I was the only one out, and it was just way too windy. Hey, Jorg. And I was on the 3.7, just getting totally overpowered. It was way too windy. But I was having fun, kind of survival conditions, and I stayed on the water a little bit too long. I was on the water for maybe 3-4 hours, and I sailed the next morning as well. Hey, Tom, Matt. I sailed the next morning, and then I wanted to sail Friday afternoon. I was just too dead. I was just so destroyed. Here's a picture of the conditions. You can see just how windy it was. Flying water. It was so windy during some moments of this where if I was sailing upwind and a gust came, I would just take off. It was super windy at this moment. And then it got a bit better in the evening. So actually the evening was saleable, even though this moment was too windy. But then the waves got kind of unrideable. But anyway, I've totally maxed myself out. I don't know if it's because I've been going full steam or what. You know, I went from the clinic to the surf festival in Fairmont to that weekend. Hey, Leon, Mario. And so my body was just destroyed after this day, after the morning session the next day. And I went home, I had a nap, and then I wanted to get an afternoon session on the Friday. And I just couldn't. My body was just so tired. I went home and I just went to bed. I was destroyed. And then I got a morning session the next day. And I still feel a little tired, but feeling good. Pier Francesco, Carl, good to see you guys. Good to be back on the normal stream. I hope everything's working. Feels like ages since we've had a normal live stream session. Ragnar, listening from the car. Ragnar-san. So yeah, this was a crazy, super windy day. The spray was like needles in the face. It was windy. That's what it felt like to be out there. All right. So yeah, who else sailed? You guys sail in that? Yeah, it's interesting. Dom with surfing. For me, if I get up and I'm in the right place, then there's a lot of crossover. And my windsurfing wave riding skill really shows itself. But otherwise, I can feel like a total beginner. I can fall on takeoffs and whatnot. I mean, I grew up surfing, so I'm not a terrible surfer. But there are times where I really feel like a good surfer, and then times where it just doesn't work at all. And it's about finding those moments where I can let the windsurfing ability shine through. It helps if the waves are a bit bigger. Surfing small waves is really hard. Bigger waves, you have a little bit more time. You have more speed from the waves. Yeah. Mark, Axel. Axel's been wind skating. That's cool. All right. Yeah, taking off is difficult. Bigger waves make it easier as long as you're not afraid. Nice, Carl. Nice to hear you got on the water. What were you working on? Did you put into practice any of the topics that we went over in the clinic. Carl was with us in Denmark. And even though we didn't have great conditions, we had a really, not only did we not have great conditions, we barely had any conditions. John was there as well. John's a legend. He's in, I think John's back in the Netherlands. Is that right, John? Yeah, so John, hey, Jeff. Carl was there. Simile was there. So Carl, but I want to hear what you were working on. So we didn't have great conditions. But we did really a lot of learning. Edwin was there as well. Hey, Edwin. So Carl, I want to know what you were working on. Edwin had a onshore session at Vikensee on my single fin. Sounds cool. Sounds fun. All right. I want to hear some more from you guys. If you sailed, what it was like. Meanwhile, I'm going to go through slowly some of the topics that have come up in the group. So I asked about Slack. Hey, Dennis. Dennis was also there in Denmark. We've got the whole crew showing up. Caro was there as well. Mario was there. Yeah. Cool. Good to see you guys. Nice. Did you land the airs back inside, Carl? So I asked about Slack, and it seems like some of you guys are on Slack and some of you are not. I'm not a huge fan of Slack, but I've been looking at ways to expand the coaching, especially for the more specific online courses that I'm doing or want to do. So for example, I did a forward loop course in the spring. Some of you guys were on that as well. And anyways, I'm taking a course about making courses, and they recommend doing I don't know what it's called, sort of the supplement through Slack. We were using WhatsApp, which seemed to work. I like WhatsApp. But it's interesting to see who's on Slack. I think the biggest issue with going to a new platform is about how many people are already on it. So the reason that Facebook works is that you guys are already on it. YouTube is also quite easy, whereas if I had my own app, I think it's a lot more difficult to get the community going. Oh, we got a lot of new people showing up in the chat. Hey, Rasmus. Yeah, it must have been a huge storm. Were you on Silt? Yeah. Samuli, I like to hear you're working on the tax. Yeah, Eric, interesting that you mentioned Discord. I think Discord is amazing. I'm not a gamer, but I like to look at what the gamers are doing. And I think Twitch is really cool, but so is Discord. And I tried to get the community on Discord about a year ago. But even though people signed up initially, there wasn't much adoption because we were the only reason for them to open Discord. And I think you need to have kind of an active Discord environment in order for it to work. Yeah, sounds like a lot of people are not on Slack, which is fine. I'm not trying to force anyone on Slack. I'm just curious how that's working. And I might move for the online courses, so not for this coaching, but the more specific courses like the forward loop course to a different platform, and they integrate with different apps. I think they integrate with Slack, maybe with Discord. I've got to check. So I'm trying to figure that stuff out to make the best experience for learning windsurfing online. Yeah, I'm not on any of these work things. I mean, I'd never been on Teams before we did the footage review last weekend. In the windsurfing world, these things don't really come up. But I'm happy to learn. And if you guys have recommendations, I want to hear them. So if you think that there's a way to do online learning, either for the live coaching or for my more specific courses, let me know. I'm super curious about all of that. Hey, Mert. You got some storms coming. Sounds good. I might be. Let me just a couple more housekeeping things, and then I want to get into the coaching. Um, the I'm gonna be in Portugal next week. I'm gonna be there from I think Tuesday till Sunday, and I've got some social things. I've got a wedding I'm going to, but I want to sail if there are conditions, and the forecast looks good. I've got my gear with me, and so I'll be down. I'll be around Lisbon, so sailing Guincho probably, but if it looks good in one of the other spots, I'll go there as well. So if you're also in Portugal, let me know. We can maybe get a session together on the water. I'd be into that. If you think it looks good somewhere other than Guincho, let me know. I'm always down to try somewhere new. I'll be with my family, so I'm not super mobile. Guincho is definitely easy to get to. But yeah, let me know. Then after that, I come back to Hamburg, and then the plan is to go to Maui. I'll be there for about a month, and then I've got to come back to Europe. It looks like there's another World Cup that's happening in November that I've got to come back for. It's not publicly announced, but it's like 99.9% sure that it's going to happen. So that's what I'm planning for at the moment. And then after that, even though I wasn't planning it because I'm in Europe, we're thinking about doing a Cape Town trip. And if we do a Cape Town trip, we'll probably do a coaching week, a masterclass in Cape Town. So if you're interested in a masterclass and you're going to be in Cape Town sometime December, January, also let me know. Hit me up in a direct message, and that will help me with the planning. We already have a few people who are interested in doing a course. And if we get a critical mass, it makes it really easy to pull the trigger and say, all right, it's happening. All right, I'm going to get into the coaching, catch up with the chat. Pier Francesco. It's kind of cold in Denmark. I don't know. Some of the other people, Caro might give a better answer. I feel like I get pretty numb. I get pretty numb to the cold. And so I don't really notice it after a certain point. I think it wasn't that cold though. I think it was like 12, 13 degrees Celsius. And the water seemed warmer than the air. I noticed, especially on the really windy day, that when I fell in the water, it was actually really relaxing. And so you'd think, when it's blowing through 7, it's mast high waves, that it's quite scary to be in the water. But it was actually very comfortable because I didn't have to deal with all the wind, and it was warmer in the water than in the air. So it was actually pretty nice to kind of fall in the water, take some waves on the head. It was more relaxing than sailing around, which is kind of funny. It's not always like that, but no, it's not too cold. Not too cold. All right, let's get into the coaching. Yep, Pier Francesco, US is maybe open. We'll see. I'm not really sure. My brother-in-law wants to come visit Maui in November. We're trying to see. All right, Caro's got the facts. Caro says 14 degree air temperature in Denmark, 17 degree water. Yeah, so the water's warm. It's warm up there. Yeah, it's nice. All right, Dom asked a question about what to do with his lower body during the front loop. And so he notices that Victor Fernandez throws his knees together in the front loops. And yeah, I noticed this too, and I've noticed this for a while. Victor, I think, is kind of the only guy that does this. I mean, there might be a few other people, but I really notice it as Victor's style. Like if you just showed me just his feet, I would say, oh yeah, that's Victor Fernandez Lopez. Is that important? I don't know. Try it, I guess, would be my response. But what you do want to make sure you're doing is you're pulling the board up to your butt, pulling your lower body to your core and using your stomach muscles and your hamstrings and all the muscles in your leg to get tight into a little ball. And that will help you rotate, give you more control. So Dom, I don't think you need to jam your knees together unless it helps you to bring everything up tight together into a little ball. But I guess the main thing I would think about is just bringing your feet up and your knees up. You can really think about starting that motion from your core, contracting your abs, bringing everything up, sucking it all up nice and tight into a little ball, which will give you more control in your rotation. See you, Dennis. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, Rasmus, I can't even imagine what Silt was like on Thursday. That sounds so gnarly. All right, Sammy asked a great question about what trips people are going on. We've got 18 responses. If you guys haven't responded and you're in the Facebook group, give a response. I love seeing where you're going, what's going on. And I think it's super cool if you guys get to meet up with each other as well. It's windsurfing is such an individual sport, but I think that makes the community so much more important because we spend so much time alone, driving to spots alone, planning alone. And yeah, that just makes the community so special. And we've got a great community in the Facebook group and on these live streams. And so if you guys get a chance to meet up with or without me, I think it's super cool and worth the effort. So post in this thread. Thank you, Sammy, for posting this question. I love this question. This is a great question to post in the group every couple months just to check in with what people are planning, and we can do some meetups. And if you guys meet up, make sure you take a group picture, try to get some footage of you guys sailing, post it in the group. I want to hear about it. I want the group to hear about it. I love that idea. And if you are planning to meet up, let me know. I mean, maybe I can help with some organization of something as well. You know, I know a lot of photographers and videographers around the world. And a lot of those things are not necessarily cost effective if you're doing it yourself. If you want to just pay for it, yeah, I can give you those contacts. But if you're splitting the costs among 4 people, 5 people, then those costs are a lot more affordable. So if that's something you're interested in, wherever you're going, let me know. Maybe I know someone. Maybe I can help out. So I love this idea. If we can make this kind of a permanent feature of the group. In fact, I'm going to write this down so that I don't forget. I'm so busy these days that I've got to write everything down. Otherwise, I'll forget it. Yeah. Where are you going as a permanent part of the group? I'm not sure the best way to implement that, but thanks, Sammy. Great question. Hope you guys get a chance to meet up. So Dom, just to answer your question quickly, some people, it looks like they extend the front leg throughout the whole rotation. I really think about sucking everything up and really, oops. Let me find a video of a forward loop. All right, forward loop video. Let's see. I mentioned that the search function kind of stopped working on my Mac. So it's kind of hidden behind the sail because the moment of most compression is about here. And you can see that I'm really tucking in my back leg. And I'm trying to bring in my front leg, but there's only so much that it wants to bring in. And so it looks like it's kind of straight, but it's actually not perfectly straight. I've got it. It is bending. And so I think you want to think about bringing both legs in. And you're still kind of scissoring the legs. But yeah, it's better the smaller you are. I don't think you want to think about having the front leg extended. And that just makes it more difficult to get both legs tucked, or even just to get the back leg tucked. That's what I'm trying to say. Because it's hard to think about extending one and not extending the other. All right, so let's move on, as long as that makes sense. Dom. And again, anyone, jump in with whatever questions you guys have. Interesting. So Richie's saying that picture, let's go back to that picture from Dom. That picture is from a double in El Medino. And he really doesn't close the legs together. What he does is kick the front leg sideways to send the board downwind. Yeah, that makes sense. But also there are times where he really jams the knees together, just even in his straight jumps. Like I wonder if we can find some video of that. What's the best way to search here? Let's see. It's really something that just Victor does. I don't know if we'll find just a straight jump here. I don't know, there's a ton of content, obviously, from all over the world. Victor is one of the most accomplished windsurfers ever. I don't know, let's click on one of his moves and see what pops up. And then if we don't see something that looks like it fits. There's one of his stalled forwards that I really like. So you can see, I think you can see on this one, even when he's just sailing straight, he's like bringing his knees together. Really kind of brings the knees to touch. This is a good one because we're going to be talking about stalled forwards next. This is a good stalled forward. I think this one of these is, I think, really good for learning. No, it's not this one. Maybe it's this one. Nope. Anyway, let's just look at one more of these. So here's a nice forward where you can see the mechanics of the stalled forward, because our next question is about stalled forwards. And so he really takes off upwind, shoots straight up, kind of like a back loop. Then at the top, steers downwind and over the gear. But notice that he stays outboard, right? His body is never really over the board, and it's never on the lee side of the center line, right? It's always windward. And then steers the board downwind, pushes the mast to windward, and see, like, the mast is totally bent over the board. And it's such a nice feeling when you get in that position. You have so much control over the rig, and then you just kind of fall down. It almost feels like kind of like you're falling. It feels very different than a speed loop where you've got a lot of wind really whipping you through the rotation. Victor Fernandez is probably about, I want to say about 6 foot, something like that. 6 foot, 6'1", 6 foot probably. I don't know what that is in centimeters. All right, so Jack has a question about forwards. Jack, what I really like to see here is how much you're looking with your head. You can really see that you're using your head a lot in the rotation. You can see it there. You can see it in the next one. Boom, head goes over. Head is looking around. Comes down, plop. So I would really like to see one of these jumps from a different angle from the beach, because I feel like there's a few key elements that we're not able to see with the GoPro footage. What I've already said is in the chat is it looks like you're coming over the center line a bit too much. It looks like here you're over the center line of the board too much to the lee side. You want to stay more to leeward and rotate under the gear. And when you come sort of over the gear like that, that's what leads to this kind of landing where the board's kind of coming in this way rather than coming in more flat. This rotation, and I hope these videos are playing smoothly for y'all. This rotation looks like it works quite well. It looks like you get more of this angle, right? The mast is pushed more to windward relative to the board. It's really hard to see from this angle, though, from the GoPro angle, exactly what's happening. It looks like you're starting that with board pointing to the sky, and you've got a good wide grip, and you're looking back. And then here you're sheeting in. And you get the landing. So I think this one seems like the best attempt that you have on video. It just seems like you want to level off a bit more before you start the rotation. So sort of steering a little bit more downwind and coming over the board to get that nose pointing down, which will help with a bit of control. Jack, we've had a lot of comments here about the moves. So I feel like you've got a good amount of coaching. There's also some good comments from other people. But I think really getting over the board, steering that nose downwind and down towards the water, I think will be really helpful, and making sure that you're getting the sail across the board to windward, which it does look like you're doing in that second one. That second one looks pretty solid. Okay, cool, Jack. Nice to have you here, by the way. Welcome to the YouTube chat. But yeah, having video of these from land, I think would be really helpful for me. And also for you, because some of how the rotation is happening gets lost with the GoPro footage. Like Edwin, I don't know if Edwin's still in chat, but I think that was pretty interesting for him to see the footage from the beach versus the GoPro footage. And he's doing good loops, landing them. But to get to the next level, he needed that beach footage because he saw kind of what was happening with the rotation, and wasn't able to work it out from the GoPro footage. And I wasn't able to either. The GoPro footage, it looked, really solid, but then actually there's a few elements I think missing a bit. Yeah, the stalled forwards are a little scary, Jack. Stalled forwards are definitely a little scary. I don't know. Jumping is interesting. I find that as I get older, fear is a much bigger factor in my comfort jumping. I used to do anything and everything. I used to just throw myself into whatever move, double forwards. I used to seriously go for push loops into back loops. I remember when Kali landed the push forwards, like, oh, I've got to also land some. And I landed my first one, I guess that was in 2007, I think, or 6. But now I just don't have the desire. I want to do the jumps that just feel good, like big back loops and push loops. And I don't know, I guess it's part of getting older. I've got to train some more. And I was doing some stall forwards also this year, but it is definitely a jump that has a little bit of a fear factor to it. That's not as easy as like just a big back loop. So I want to have some more jumping days and try to get into it again. Yeah, Edwin, cool. That's good to hear. Tavi's got... So Tavi, do you say how to do the camera? So Tavi, why don't you let us know how to do that camera setup you're recommending? Yeah, Pierre Francesco saying that getting the nose down is the scary part. Once you get that done, then it's not that bad. Yeah, I find with stalled forwards is they're not... I find like the first one I do for the day is kind of scary, and then I can do a bunch. Yeah, I don't know. It's just so funny how age and fear and all that stuff relates. Jeff, thank you for the solidarity here. Hey, Ben, welcome to the live stream. All right, York's got a question about tuning his board because the board is bouncing too much in the bottom turn. He had that issue with his Taboo Pocket 75 liter sailing overpowered with a 3.6 with strong gusts a few days ago. The wind was tearing the waves apart, and it was gnarly conditions. It doesn't have the same issue with the curve 86 and 96. But those conditions are less radical. So, yes, when the wind is super strong, it is definitely harder not to bounce out. There's a couple reasons for that. One is there's probably more chop. So how do you solve that? You want to make sure that you're looking for the part of the wave that is smooth. Placement on the wave is so important. The fundamentals are so important. Fundamentals are which wave you're on, where you are on that wave, and the timing on that wave. And so looking for the smooth part of the wave to do your bottom turn is huge. That's also the smooth part of the wave, normally where the wave has the most power, so it's where you want to be. And then you don't bounce. But also, when it's really windy like that, you're often leaning back more because you're leaning against the sail. And when you're leaning back and then you go into the bottom turn, the board wants to bounce on the outline. All right, does that make sense? So the more back you are when you go into that bottom turn, you like stomp hard on the bottom turn, the more the board wants to bounce. Okay, so how do we counteract that? One is you want to make sure your hips are turned into the turn. This is something we talk about constantly. This is one of the keys to having a good bottom turn. And that is that on the board, if this is your board, these are your feet, you want to make sure that your hips are not like this, but like this. I don't know if you guys can see that. But what I mean is that your hips are not pointing towards the nose of the board, but are pointing towards your toes. So your hips are pointing towards your toes, pointing towards the rail, the other rail. And so when you're getting on your toe side rail, that's what you want to think about, going toe side, heel side, toe side, heel side, and rocking the board like this rather than turning the board side to side. And if you have those hips pointed into the turn, it equally distributes the weight between your feet, and so which is so important. And so when people always say, "Oh, you need to lean forward, you need more front foot pressure," that's great, but how do you do that? And this is how. It's by getting those hips turned. And so you don't have to think about pressing hard on your front foot or pressing hard on your back foot. Just think about getting your hips rotated. So really making sure that your lower body is really rotated so that it's in the direction of the turn. This is a trick that I learned from Nick Baker back when I was a young windsurfer, just starting on the world tour. Nick Baker was still competing, seasoned veteran. I'm sure that all the older guys know who he is. The younger guys might not. He was one of the top pros of the 90s and early 2000s. Good friend of Jason Polikow, who is probably my hero in windsurfing. If you haven't seen, quick aside, if you haven't seen Jason Polikow's About Time movie, I really recommend watching it. It's on YouTube now for free. And when I was a kid, I had the VHS, and I just watched that thing over and over and over. It's absolutely amazing for learning about windsurfing. But York, back to your question. So get those hips turned into the turn, and then you can also move your mast track about 1 centimeter farther forward, which will help keep the nose down, keep that forward rail engaged so that you're not bouncing back. So I think you've got some solid things to try. Let us know how it goes. All right, moving on. Jack, you say that you're only 22. So you got to go for it then, Jack. You're only 22. You got to go for it. Wear a helmet if that makes you feel more comfortable or confident. But yeah, I want to see some of these stalled forwards. Semele says, do you think pushing the boom down in the end of the forward loop? For starters, you rise the boom above your head, but do you intentionally push it down after that? Very interesting question, Semele. So what I'm thinking about is really pushing the boom up. So I like to think about making myself an X. So I go down, get tall into the X, and then I make myself into a ball. So getting really small into a ball. So tall to ball, tall to ball. But what I'm thinking about is more trying to pull myself up to the boom rather than pulling the boom down below me. And it's a slightly different feeling on the water, even if in describing it, it sounds like it should be really similar. For example, in a air flocka or air taka, you really have the feeling of pushing the boom down. But in the forward, it's a lot the feeling of pushing it up and then pulling yourself up to the boom. So it's a little bit the feeling of pulling the sail down. But I think it can be helpful to conceptualize it more of pulling yourself to the sail. And then at the very end of the forward, I kind of have the feeling of extending the gear away from me. So I'm tight in the rotation. And then I extend everything, my arms, my legs, to stop the rotation and extend it so that when I land, that I can compress again so that I have a soft landing. You know, windsurfing and most other sports, there's a lot of compression and extension, right? So you compress to load up and then you extend to spring off, and then you compress to rotate, and then you extend to stop rotating, and then you land and you compress to absorb the landing. There's a lot of this compression and expansion. I don't know if that answers your question, Simile. Let me know if it does or doesn't. But at least for the beginning, the first half of the rotation, I really have the feeling of throwing the gear up and then pulling myself up towards the gear. All right. Tomas has a question about goose screws. These look solid, Tomas. Looks like you're really getting there. One of the things that I talk about when I talk about goose screws or 360s, there's a few real key points. One of which is that you really want to make sure that you're leaning, so your body is leaning inside this circle. So if you think of this circle that's being drawn from your bottom turn, and then if you complete it, you want to make sure that you're leaning inside that circle, not outside the circle. Yes, you can make them if you're leaning outside the circle, but it's a good habit to be leaning more in the circle and to be more over the board. You want to keep this front hand, so the hand that's closest to the mast, really on your hip. And you want to really extend that back hand. And you can think of it like almost like a clue first back loop. And so you go up and you're not really doing anything. You're just getting the height. And then it's just when you're coming down. And so what I really say in the beginning is you really just do nothing. Because one of the biggest mistakes when you're trying to learn the goose screw is doing too much. And so you really just, you go off the top of the wave in that position, leaning into the circle, and you just do nothing, and you'll start to rotate. And this first one looks pretty good like that. You could be leaning a little bit more into the circle, but looks pretty good. And so if you want a bit more whip in that rotation, then what you want to do is, so you're going up, again, still doing nothing, but then you can twist your hips, and you're going from this position with that front hand really close to the hip and switching. So you're then pushing out with that front hand and pulling in with that back hand, sheeting in again as you twist with your hips. And that can give you some great whip in the end of the rotation to help you get around. But if you're trying to learn the wave 360, you really don't want to do too much. That whip at the is something you do at the very end, and it's not something you want to do too forcefully. Let's see if I don't have my external hard drive in at the moment. So let's see if I have a 360. Oops. That I can show. I might not. Looks like I don't. Oh, that's a photo from my wedding. But anyway, Tomas, these look good. I think goose screws are a great move for everyone to work on. I saw that Ben Profit did a little video about goose screws, which is super cool. If you reach, I think, a good intermediate level, this is very accessible. All right, moving on. We've got these forward loops from Matt. And Matt was in our forward loop course. And now he's busting out forwards, which looks super cool. Going off very small waves, which I like to see. Matt, one of the main things that will help is going with an overhand grip. You said in the comments that you had an injury, which is why you go underhand. I fully understand that. And if you can't, you can't, and you got to deal with what you have. There's a guy in Tenerife, Bart, who has an ankle injury. He was a really good sailor before his ankle injury, and he still is afterwards, and he can't sail with foot straps. And so he does back loops, wave rides, all without foot straps. So what is my point? Just that, if you've got an injury, you've got to work around it. No problem. But it's a little bit easier to get that extension if you've got an overhand grip. So you can see here that you are getting the extension, but it's a little bit late in the rotation. I'd like to see it a little bit earlier, right as you're right about here already. You have that front arm fully extended. And that's just a lot easier to do if you've got that front hand going forward. But the main thing that I want to see is the head. So your head is looking forward the whole time. If your head is looking over your rear shoulder in the direction of where you're going, so over your back shoulder is the direction of where you're going, because the forward loop is a downwind 360, it will be a lot easier to know where you are in the rotation, and your rotation will be a lot more horizontal and a lot smoother. So really getting that head, focusing on that head is sort of the main thing that I would do. It looks also like you're throwing yourself a little bit forward, which is fine, which is totally fine. I mean, that's something to work on later in the move if you want to, but you'll notice the biggest improvement with the head. The head is like magic. Once you get that head, it's just works so good. All right, Bart comes to us with a question about just straight jumps, which is a great question. I love these basic questions. We talk about a lot of advanced things, but it's good to talk about the basics as well. I was talking before about compression, expansion, and you don't have to get too technical with trying to implement that. Really, if you just crouch down and stand up, you're doing it. So I wanted to get more height on my aerial 360s in Pozo, and all I thought about was just getting lower in my bottom turn and then just standing up as I got to the lip. And that was how I got more projection. So just going down and standing up, going down and standing up. And you can really spring off to a chop hop, to an ollie, really push off of the wave as well. But in the beginning, just thinking about compressing and then standing up, so getting low, bending the knees, and then standing up is enough. You can do it definitely more so, but in the beginning, that's enough to get that push. Bart, I think you could take off a little bit more upwind. So here you're really taking off across the wave, and even if the wind is onshore, if you really steer up into this wave, right? So this is kind of a steep part of the wave. If you really steer up into that and you make sure that your board is really traveling up the ramp, you get some nice height. The other advantage of taking off up into the wind is the sail is really positioned then like a wing, like a kite, and it lifts you up and it carries you down, so you land softly. Right? And you get that nice projection, you get up and you come down on the tail of the board, which is also a safer way to land when you're taking off with more forward momentum, whether you're taking off downwind or just on these kind of ramps. Then the tendency is to land more flat, which is also a harder landing. So here you're taking off really along the wave, sort of across the wave rather than perpendicular with the wave. You're more closer to parallel with it. So really, if you aim to be perpendicular, get more height, it also will push you into a position that gives you more control and more hang time. So that's a huge one. And then the compression and expansion, I think that's already enough to see some improvement. And I don't want you to get overwhelmed with too much. So I really think going upwind, trying to get perpendicular. So make sure your board is not taking off sideways on the ramp, but really perpendicular with the ramp. And that's how you get the most height. And then working on the compression and extension. And then trying to think of the sail like a wing, using it to get some hang time. I'm really excited. I think that these are some easy things that you can implement, and I want to hear how they go. I think they're easy to implement and they have a big payoff. So Bart, I really want to hear this. I'm looking forward to the footage of your big jumps. All right, we had some follow-up questions about GoPros. Mario, I hope that answered your question. If not, shoot me a direct message. Pier Francesco asked about multi-fin boards. Well, Pier Francesco, you've actually got a question in the chat about Wave 360s. So timing, speed, wide grip, pulling hand, remaining sheeted out, lean inside, right? And adding head rotation would help. Yeah, Pier Francesco, yeah. The only thing I'd add, which is actually the most important thing, it's more important than all of those pretty much, is the timing. So the timing and the placement on the wave is more important than everything else. So for doing a good goose screw, then the timing and placement don't matter as much, and so then it's just those elements that you highlighted. But I mean, you also mentioned timing, but I mean, the other elements are the ones that just matter. But for a normal wave 360 where you're trying to land back inside the wave, timing and placement are the most important things that you can do. And then having everything else just helps make it work. But it's getting that high five that then throws you back into the wave, and getting that exact moment that the lip is throwing, connecting with the bottom of your board. And sometimes it's really easy to screw that up by trying to go too vertical. So one of the main, I think, revelations for people learning the 360 is you don't have to go so vertical. You can go even down the line, and how you're hitting the wave is really similar to a down the line aerial. So if you can do down the line aerials, that's a very similar position and timing to the 360. Hope that makes sense. Oh, and to answer your question here about switching between different kind of fin setups, I have some 5-fin boards, and it's cool for testing, trying quads, trying thrusters, trying twinsers. I pretty much prefer thrusters for everything, and I don't like having to switch. The only place where I like twins is in Pozo, and then I prefer a twin. But I stay on quads because, I stay on thrusters because that's what I'm used to. If I was just doing it for fun, or, if Pozo was the only event on tour, I would probably, I don't know, maybe I'd get some twin fin boards just for Pozo, but as it is, I'm not. Andrew had a question about a mast. I hope I answered it. Let me know if not. I think we're kind of all cut up. I'm going to keep going through this to see. Tim had a question about seat covers. So the seat covers that are most popular in Hawaii and that we use are the Wet Okole seat covers. That is just wetokole.com. WETOKOLE. The website is here. They make good seat covers. Thomas is saying that Lista was double mast high 3.7 on Thursday. Thomas, I wanted to come on Thursday, but I couldn't. I had a time constraint. The car broke down, so I had to rent a car to drive up to Denmark, and the ferry schedule didn't work for getting to Norway. Otherwise, I would have come, but I couldn't reach the evening ferry. And then the Thursday, there was no early ferry on Thursday. Maybe there's never an early ferry. I don't know. But yeah, I wanted to come. Good question from Andrea. Windsurf Kook asks, what are your favorite spots in the Baltic and North Sea? I've got a lot of favorite spots. I really like Weissenhaus. I've had a lot of fun in different spots around the Baltic Sea that I've only been to once. In Rügen, in I don't know how to pronounce it. Moon, the island in Denmark. Rügen was really fun. I really enjoyed Rügen. All right, Jeff, we've got some video from Jeff. Richie, yes, there will be a PWA Wave event this year. It looks like. I guess it's not 99. It's like 99% sure, but not confirmed. It's in France. In November. But I probably shouldn't say much more until they send out the entry forms. But yeah, France in November. We've got these videos from Jeff. I'm going to go back to smaller videos. The quality is not great on these. I really like this first one. I love this energy in the bottom turn. Jeff, your bottom turns is something that I know you've been working on and talking about. And I love the acceleration. And it's hard to see because this is a bit far away. But it looks like you really do get low before you go. And it looks like you're really turning your hips into the turn. And I can see the acceleration. It's like you just squirt out of it. You're kind of going slow. And then you get in position, go into the bottom turn, you just accelerate, squirting into this next turn. Line up with that fickle little power source. Come around. I love the energy here, working this wave. Get this high five. Get that moment. You could have maybe got a little backside there, but zero complaints. I really like how you work this wave. Looks difficult conditions, super light wind. Looks solid. Looks like you're putting together a lot of pieces that we've been talking about in the coaching. So let me know if that's the case. And how did it feel? All right, on these other waves, this wave just really doesn't offer much. And, one of the things I say is that the fundamentals of wave riding are so important. That includes wave selection. And you're not always going to get it right. And so it's about setting yourself up to get it right the majority of the time. Kind of like poker, right? I'm not a poker expert at all. I only played a few times in my life. But I know like poker skill is about setting yourself up with the right decision making. So you're not necessarily looking at results, you're looking at your decisions. And the sort of tracking decisions and the awareness of them is what helps you get better. And so it's really the same here with the waves. It's just looking at the decisions you're making, having the awareness about it, and not judging yourself about it like good or bad, but just saying, okay, this wave didn't work. What was different about this wave? And you say some things in here about some waves that are coming off the outer reef a different way, or the outer bar and into the inner bar. And these observations are what lead to having good wave selection. And it's hard, if you're sailing a lot of different spots. But that adds up in your brain over time, and you get better at intuiting it. So again, kind of tricky wave. I can see it kind of crumbling. But you do a good job staying upwind, not chasing it downwind. Like in the wave before, it looks like you kind of chased it downwind and it just never really appeared. You get this nice corner section. What I want to see you do is get a backside on this. This is a perfect opportunity for backside. You got tons of room, speed. Get that sail laid down. Get the high five on the backside section. You're good enough to do it, and it will feel really good and will add a lot to your riding. All right. Is that everything? I think it is. I think we are all caught up. Wow, that went a lot quicker than I thought it would. So, do you guys have any questions? I'll be around next week for sure. I'll be in Portugal. Yeah, I'll be doing the stream from Portugal. And at some point I'm traveling to Maui. I don't have a ticket yet. So that might, hopefully won't, but that might disrupt our schedule. I don't think it will, but I'll let you guys know. Got great discussion in the group. I love the questions. something I want to do is have more regular questions. 'Cause I love hearing from you guys. It's always so interesting how you're approaching windsurfing, what your windsurfing life looks like. So if you have some good questions that you want to ask the group, maybe message me, or I can put together a Google document. We can have a Google document going. I'm just going to make a note of that. And we can come up with some good questions to ask everyone with the goal of having maybe a question every week. Anyway, you guys are awesome. I hope you get on the water. I hope it's windy. Let me know if it is. Post in the group. Have a good windy week. I hope I get some footage to show you from Portugal. And I look forward to seeing you on Sunday. Take care, everyone, and good night.